dig for the wisdom. My grandmother used to call those little gems. What are the little distinctions or the little things that you have learned as a result of this thing that's happening right now? So what is the wisdom that you've gained?
Cue music. Places, everybody places. We're starting in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Autoimmune Hour, where we look at the rise of autoimmune disorders. I've brought together top experts that range from doctors, specialists, nutritionists, researchers, and even those recovering from autoimmune to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information about autoimmunity and how to live your life uninterrupted.
Thank you for joining us here on the Autoimmune Hour with Sharon Saylor. And we don't want you to worry about taking too many notes, so you can join the Autoimmune Hour's Courage Club, and we'll send you the transcripts and show notes from every episode. Sign up now at understandingautoimmune.com. Now, back to your host, Sharon Saylor.
Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour, Surviving to Thriving. And oh my goodness, I'm down here in South Florida again, enjoying my time. You know, it's a little bit humid for me, but that's okay. It's finding a lovely time with friends and community. And what are you doing this weekend? I've got my tea here as always, and I'm looking forward to that, as I'm looking forward to a brand new guest that we have. It was introduced to me by Swami Tirtha, who's been a guest on our show several times, and I just absolutely adore Swami, and I haven't had the opportunity to meet Adam in person or to speak with him yet, so I'm so excited to find out about how he integrates self-discovery and business mastery to create accelerated results. And you might be going, Sharon, what's business mastery have to do with my autoimmune condition? You know, I've always said how you do one thing is how you do your whole life. So how you do business is how you do healing. How you do money is how you do healing. How you do relationships is how you do healing. And this idea of integrating self-discovery into, let's take out the business mastery and just say integrating self-discovery into personal mastery and understanding how we do this. So tonight's guest is Adam Markel. He is a speaker, author, and entrepreneur who inspires, empowers, and guides people to massive business and lasting personal and professional growth. He's a recognized expert in the integration of business and personal development, and he speaks and mentors around the globe in areas of business, entrepreneurship, leadership, and transformation. His best-selling book, Pivot, is the art and science of reinventing your career and life. He's also the host of the Conscious Pivot podcast, where he shares his insights on pivoting in today's fast-paced world, where he interviews experts, innovators, and influencers to share their stories and wisdoms in the area of business and life. Adam is the CEO of More Love Media, a company dedicated to empowering individuals as well. We'll learn more about Adam in the next few minutes that we have him. We have him for just part of the show, but I'm so excited. So welcome, Adam. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh my goodness. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Oh my gosh, you know, we were chatting beforehand, everyone, about our mutual friend and how wonderful it is to have community that introduces like-minded people. So, Adam, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get into this idea of reinvention?
Wow. Well, I'm sort of a recovering attorney. That's the way I describe myself these days. And in truth, I'm recovered. So it's been 10 years since my leaving the practice of law and having spent 18 years doing that work, much of the time not loving it. And I could use other descriptions for not loving it. That's sort of the polite way of saying it. But I was pretty miserable. And I think there's, at least this is would be suggested by Harris polls today, I'm not alone in that there are 55% or so of the people who are in a job are actively looking for other work. More than 80% of folks that are in a career are not in their dream career. It's not where they feel that their true calling is necessarily. And I was in that situation, but ill-equipped to deal with it at the time. I just didn't know I had any options. Really blessed to be married to my college sweetheart at the time. And well, let's see, it's 4 days from now, from the time that we're taping this, 4 days from now, we'll be married 29 years. So that's
congratulations. Yep. What an achievement.
and we have four adult children, healthy kids. And so that's also amazing. I mean, as a parent, the most important thing is that you don't damage them too much. That's what I look at it going, yeah, we didn't damage them. These 4 kids, they're okay. They're healthy. So I had a lot to be grateful for, and I was blessed, and yet I was miserable. And I think that's what happens when we spend so much of our waking time doing things that, our heart isn't in it. And so for me, I had success by every measurement, from a societal standpoint. I had a lot of money and prestige and that kind of success, but I was unhappy. So I really figured out along the way through a lot of pain and a lot of suffering, which was only exacerbated by my reading about my plight. So I started reading books about what I was going through. And then I really recognized how deep a hole I was in at the time. And I realized that success without fulfillment feels like failure. And I felt like a failure. And my body was changing. I found myself needing caffeine in the afternoon just to stay awake. I was having trouble sleeping at night. I was taking Ambien to get to sleep. I was waking up with anxiety in the morning and feeling that anxiousness and angry, easy to anger. I mean, the kinds of symptoms that you can't ignore. You really can't ignore those things. And I did for so many years. And so in any event, I reinvented myself because I couldn't stand the pain. And I ultimately started to teach other people about what I had done and was in the process of still doing. And I wrote a book called Pivot, The Art and Science of Reinventing Your Career and Life. And it became a very big bestseller internationally, which enabled me to speak on stages and things all over the world about that topic of personal and professional reinvention. And so that's been a joy for me. It's led me to the point where I'm here with you speaking right now. And I've been able to spend a lot of time with people for many, many years on that topic. And I'll say this too, both my mother-in-law and my father have had autoimmune related challenges that really were debilitating at various points in their life. So my father started out where initial diagnosis was a runaway case of mononucleosis, and then it was Epstein-Barr, and then it was other things that weren't being properly diagnosed, and certainly they weren't putting it under that framework of autoimmune. And my mother-in-law, same thing. She had dermatomyositis that was called Epstein-Barr, and before that it was something else. And so I have a particular sensitivity and a compassion for that being a challenge physically and more than just physically in people's lives. And pivoting, the work that we teach, is really related to much more than just your career. It has a lot to do with your mental outlook, with your health, relationships, etc.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much research out there right now that past traumas, past stressors, the current stress you're under, all exacerbate. They'll say it doesn't cause autoimmune, but it certainly opens the door for other things like pathogens like Epstein-Barr to absolutely integrate into the physical symptom and create havoc. It's fascinating. My diagnosis is dermatomyositis, and it's very rare. So isn't that fascinating to find another person with dermatomyositis? I'll say the diagnosis, the word they put on it, but I refuse to accept it as a label, because that way, if you label yourself, and we'll talk about this, is how you label yourself is how you show up.
I agree with that. Language is so important.
It absolutely is. So let's talk a little bit about this idea of pivoting, though. When we get a diagnosis, first we go into shock, a little bit of grief, some denial, all sorts of things, which is similar to any sort of thing, whether you're fired from a job or going through a breakup or any sort of thing. What are your first steps when someone's in that moment or just trying to figure their way out of that moment to begin the pivot process?
I say this and I'll smile and chuckle, and we can all chuckle at this, but it's also true. We have to breathe.
You know what is so interesting? And I'm a huge fan of breathing too, which I know sounds weird, but conscious breathing is so critical and so overlooked. I had a client one time who years ago I told her, just breathe, you'll be fine. And I think it was 12 years later, she came to me and she, when you told me that, I was so angry with you, but it was the best advice I'd ever gotten.
Well, there's sort of 3 steps in this process of dealing with a pivot when it comes sort of unexpectedly. The book I wrote, The Art and Science of Reinvention, is very much a book about designing a new outcome in the future. So that book is also divided up into 3 pieces. The first is getting clear. There's very little we can do without clarity. So clarity is very connected to our behaviors. The second piece is about momentum. That's the baby steps and the things that we do in our life to change things. And that has a lot to do with behaviors. And many people have limiting beliefs and have limiting behaviors, which is why their lives can feel stuck at times. And the third piece is about taking action, putting it into a plan so that you've got a bit of a roadmap for the future. Okay, and that's more the design phase of pivoting. The default phase of pivoting is where we get that unexpected diagnosis, or someone dies. We didn't, see that coming, or our job ends, or something like that. We're really caught off guard. And in that case, there's three other things that I typically will talk about. One is to embrace. The second is to embody, and the third is to execute. And so I think to go back to that moment in time when you're caught off guard, which is what you asked me about. Yes, to breathe. To breathe is key, because breathing isn't just what we do naturally. I mean, to stay alive, it is that, but it's not just that. It's also our connection, to me, to our higher selves. It's our connection to our heart space. It's our connection to source. And I will say, for me, it's my connection to spirit. It's my connection to God. So to consciously breathe is very different than to breathe unconsciously. And we do that all the time. We're constantly breathing unconsciously. It's just how we're built. It's our habit to breathe, right? And I think there's a great distinction between habits, therefore, and things that you do more consciously, which I would call rituals. So in that moment, to take some deep breaths, to be grounded, to be present with yourself, to know in that moment something that's true for you. So for example, there was a moment in time when I was very invested in a business, very invested in my role as both a co-owner as well as a founder and a CEO of a business. And my partners had more shares in the company, were in control, so to speak, were in control, came to me one time and said, "We are not happy with the direction of this company. We don't see eye to eye with you. We don't believe in your vision. Basically, you're gone." A couple of months of figuring it all out, how to exit, but basically getting the boot. And I remember in that moment where I realized it was happening, I could see it. It was just in slow motion, almost like I've not gotten a diagnosis like that, but I've been around people who have as well. And I imagine it's the same thing. The words are coming out of the doctor's mouth, or it's like in slow motion. Am I hearing what I'm hearing? Is this actually real, et cetera? And so I did what I'm advising. I took those deep breaths. And what I realized came to me in that breathing is now a part of what I teach other people. And that is, I was hearing these words: embrace, embrace, embrace this thing that's happening, embrace the pivot. And very difficult in the moment when you don't know how it's all going to turn out, to embrace something that feels threatening, life-threatening, and threatening to your sense of security, like the loss of a job or the loss of your health and all of it, right? So that's a counterintuitive response. The more, I think, more prevalent reaction is that people, they become tense. Their breathing becomes shallow. They get into fight or flight mode, or they freeze. That's more prevalent. So the first thing I would say is to breathe and realize you are well, you are okay. You are breathing. That's a good sign that you are still breathing, right?
Absolutely. That's the critical sign there. I'll notice that there's going to be a time where sometimes you'll notice yourself in fight, flight, or freeze, and then you start breathing, and that's okay too. Oftentimes, until you go through the process enough times to know that the automatic response is just breathe through it, it's okay. The recovery process is more important than if you've momentarily flipped into fear. It's just breathe your way back out of it.
And the cortisol, how your body responds or deals with stress, has an impact on the decisions you're going to make in that moment. I mean, people can make some pretty poor decisions in the moment when they're under stress.
And especially when someone I call the white coat authority is telling you all sorts of really scary things. And since it's your life, it's a very different way that it's received when they go, you, and it's something disastrous, and another you, and another disaster. And it just keeps coming. And I think one of the things I learned after the diagnosis is don't make any quick decisions. But one decision we have to make real quick is we'll be right back after this quick commercial break with Adam Markel.
Life Interrupted Radio will return after these messages from our sponsors. It's great sponsors like these that keep this show coming to you every week. Be sure and stop by lifeinterruptedradio.com to learn more.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living, a chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Listen and imagine. It takes 5 seconds to send a text, and for those 5 seconds, you're driving blind. Life is worth more than a text. Stay alive. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour, Surviving to Thriving, and I'm having a wonderful time here talking to Adam Markel about his book, Pivot, and how we can create life strategies for success. As I always say, how we do one thing is how we do everything, and when we had to drop in that quick commercial break, we were talking about not making any quick decisions. So let's get back to that.
Right. There are people who will make a decision, like you say, quickly, and then potentially see that they had other options, see that they may have even made a kind of compounded the situation, making a poor choice, and now it makes it worse. But if you knew 100% that you were okay, that it was all going to be fine, and not only was it all going to be fine, but that in the end, sometime in the future, it could be, a year, could be 30 years, it could be 3 lifetimes in the future. I don't know what the future, where the limits on that extend to, but you knew for sure it was going to be just what was required. That everything that's happening in our lives is required, and that's a blessing. And if you knew that as a certainty in that moment, you would embrace it. You would say, maybe it's not exactly what I thought I wanted at this time, but clearly this is in my highest interest, and therefore I love it, and I'll embrace it. And that's a completely different energy. It gives you access to a whole different set of tools and options. And in that moment, you want to be highly resourced. When something happens like that, you want to be at your best, right? You want to have the access to as many resources as you can, starting with those that are innate to you and are divinely yours. And look, I'm a lawyer, guys. This can sound a little wooey. Even when I hear it, I go, oh, that's out there on some level, especially maybe your audience might be more receptive to this. But if I was speaking to a bunch of lawyers or my old New York City buddies or something, they might look at me kind of funny. And the truth is, this is real. This is real life. And real life is about, in so many ways, how it is that we are able to access our true self, our higher self, our own divineness in a moment when other people might be panicking, when all kinds of things on the outside look chaotic. Change is something happening constantly. It's chronic. When we're talking about health stuff, chronic is a word that comes up. We're in the process right now of even writing a new book about how it is you create resilience in the face of chronic change. And this is one of the ways you do it.
So many things came to my mind about when I was at the height of the diagnosis and a lot of the skin rashes and muscle weakness. I started the Autoimmune Hour, and people are looking at me like, what are you doing? Why are you taking on another challenge and all of this? But I embraced it, and actually it was one of the ways I could gather all the information I needed to know to make decisions. In my other life, as Adam knows, I do communications training and body language work, and I was frustrated talking to medical professionals. I'm going, with my training, I am absolutely frustrated. What are people without this training going through and understanding the nuance of language? It's so important for me one of the things I discovered was beyond embracing it, was charting that new future. For me, it was, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to share what I'm learning with other people. And that's how the Autoimmune Hour came about, was embracing the diagnosis. Doesn't mean you're happy about it at the time,
Yes.
but that was really critical for me, was to get out there, learn everything I could, and then share what I was learning, because there was so much scary information out there, and it doesn't have to be scary.
When you start with embracing, it enables you to then recalibrate because you're not in resistance. So when we're faced with the change, that sudden thing, our reaction is often to resist it. So you have this other choice, this other option, which is to accept it. That's another option. But there's a third option, and I call that acceptance plus. And acceptance plus is this embracing piece, which is that we're going to utilize it. It's not going to go to waste, and we have to recalibrate to do that. So it's now you're going to embody it. You're literally going to embody the fact that there's a new normal here, and the new normal is that recalibration of, yeah, I have something in my body that's working its way through, or that it will alter some of the things that I do. And I mean, we can always judge that as wrong or bad, but as soon as we do that, we're in resistance to what is, and you're working against the universe as opposed to something that is more loving and kind and more true, which is that everything is happening there for us, for our benefit. So why should this be any different?
So a little off topic, Adam, but what happens if the resistance is from the people closest to you? I know this will sound crazy, but super take care of you. Like, oh, don't stand up. Don't, or the opposite, like they just go into the grief mode for you. How do you suggest people help other people to see I'm okay?
That's such a great question. We are always affecting people, in so many ways. And I once heard somebody say that you're always affecting or infecting people. And that's pretty extreme, but you can see how that's the case sometimes. But yeah, the people around you are going to be triggered in some way. And their fear, it's often what gets triggered in them is their own vulnerability and fear. So here's how they respond is they do for you and do for you, like all of a sudden you can't do anything for yourself, or somehow or another they've, like you say, predicted the worst future, and that's their own fear, et cetera. So I think the best that we can do in those situations is model in our own behavior how it is that we wish to be taken care of or treated, and set healthy boundaries, as my wife would say. So we just be loving in the way that we let people know how we want to be cared for. So to say, I so appreciate that you want to help me and take care of me. And in fact, I really want you to do that. And there are times when I would prefer that not be the case. And if it's okay with you, I'd love to let you know when those times are. I prefer that you not do that. And certainly if what you want to do is talk to me about all the ways that this thing could go sideways and that you're already kind of planning my funeral or whatever it is, I'm going to let you know while I know you're coming from a place of love and you're even mourning, somehow grieving with me for this thing that you think is happening. That's not where I'm coming from. And that energy isn't really what I want to. I don't want to be infected by that. What I want is to be affected by your love for me. So can we find a way for you to express your love that feels healthier and that actually is more of what would work to help me, as opposed to making me feel like I don't want to spend time with you.
Oh, that's beautiful. I can't wait for the transcript, guys, because I'm going to read that several times, Adam. Thank you. That was really lovely. Now, your next book is on resilience. And what are some tips that you have for building resilience? Because I'll tell you, sometimes, especially in the early phases of going into thriving and staying in thriving, sometimes it feels like one step forward, two steps back.
Oh my goodness, isn't that true? I would say that the creation of your rituals is one of the areas that I think very powerful in what it takes to create resilience. So there was a Harvard Business Review article some months ago that talked about how professional athletes recover from stress. And they compared that recovery process to those of the corporate athletes. So there were the athletic folks and the folks that are in business, whether they're in job and they're executives or they're entrepreneurs. Sports folks, they play a game, they play it very hard for a few hours at a time, and then they take a break, and sometimes they have months between their seasons. in business today, you're on all the time. I mean, people have very few boundaries. It's almost like a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour thing where it can feel that way, so that the level of stress is even greater, I think, in that arena. But what they found was that the highest performing athletes had rituals for recovery. And these were mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical rituals. And this was looking at them sort of top to bottom and what they did to recover quickly. And this, as I say, was a Harvard Business Review article. And I found that so fascinating, because to be resilient, so we use the word resilience, I don't think there's a more important skill or tool that you could either learn, adopt, or enhance in yourself than the skill of resilience today. Because change is constant. It's chronic. Disruption is everywhere. And so therefore stress, our response to change, which is automatically seeing it or feeling it as threatening, is stress. So to be able to recover from that is important. And we've created rituals that help for that recovery process that produces resilience. So for example, how you wake up in the morning, what do you do in the first few minutes of waking? What sort of a ritual have you adopted? So we have a 3-step waking process. It's going to sound super simplistic. And at the same time, it's profound in its simplicity, I think, because I've taught it for years all over the world. It's changed my life, certainly, and the lives of so many other people that I get to hear from, whether it's parents who've taught it to their kids, or it's older people that are dealing with their aging process, or it's millennials that are just caught in this sort of never an off moment, with social media and everything else. They're on all the time. So it's 3 steps. The first step is to wake up. And that sounds funny, and we could all wink about that, but there's no guarantee that we're going to wake up tomorrow. So the fact is that when we do wake up, it is a blessing. In fact, there was no guarantee we'd wake up today. And those who are listening, watching this right now, and you and I, certainly, that was a gift. It was a blessing. So waking up is key. Waking up on a conscious level as well as physically. And in that waking moment, I suggest that people also sit in gratitude for even a few seconds, to realize as they take that first conscious breath, there are people taking their last breath at that very moment. So regardless of the health challenges you might have, or business challenges or relationship challenges, we all have them. All of us do. We can be grateful to start. And that's the first seeds that you're planting for the day. So it's waking, being grateful. And then there's a statement that I say out loud, and I invite people who are taking this in right now to consider saying these words out loud. I love my life. I love my life. I love my life. It's a mantra. It's a declaration. It's an intention. It's a calling forth what is true at the deepest level for us, that we are on a journey of self-discovery, of self-love, of coming back, turning to our factory settings, that unconditional love is how we were born, and unconditional acceptance is what's really true. And so all that false stuff, all that fake news, if you will, as we grow up thinking that somehow we're not deserving or worthy of love unconditionally, or acceptance for whatever reasons or whatever experiences we've had, that to return to those factory settings is so key in creating a stronger, the more resilient person that we are capable of being. Because in business and in life, if we don't get to the next day, if we don't get to apply the wisdom from what we've learned, then what would it have been for in the first place? So resilience is the key. And that one waking ritual, I think, is a great place to begin. So wake up, be grateful. And if you feel like saying it, declare it out loud. I love my life.
Oh, I love my life. Thank you. Thank you. And I put a little Post-it notes around on things like on mirrors, other places where inspirational things throughout the day, which helps just keep me coming back and focusing on the gratitude part. Because, as the day goes on, sometimes you can get so wound up in answering phones or doing other things that take some time to recenter yourself, reground yourself. At least I know I have to do that. Sometimes I get sort of carried away and I have to come back to center. I love that. Thank you. And I have to be honest, there were times at the beginning of the diagnosis where when I did my gratitude journal, sometimes it was just putting my feet on the floor. It's like, okay, I'm just grateful that I'm awake and able to sit up and put my feet on the floor. But that still created profound change. And that's what I love, that these don't have to be big earth-shattering moments that you're grateful for. Whatever it is happening for you in the moment, that's just self-love. I appreciate that. What are some other things that you found about resilience? The study of resilience fascinates me because you can see some people who, with a diagnosis or other things happening, fall into what I call professional victimhood. Where others are like, wow, how do they keep going? That's shocking. That's amazing. And I love the term ritual. It's such an intense word. What are some other things that you have found that people do to continue to create success throughout their day?
Thank you. This is a part of the Pivot book that I really am very, there's things in it I absolutely adore and love and have really worked well. And there are other things that I might do differently. I mean, it's gotten such great feedback. I try not to be too critical, but that's the way anybody is, right? You look at your work and you go, oh, this is what's 80% of things that are amazing. And then you look at the 20% you would do differently. But I love our treatment of that subject, resilience, in the book, where I describe 3 ways of approaching a setback. Because I think that when we talk about a health issue of some kind or a diagnosis, it feels like a setback.
Yes, a profound setback.
A profound setback in some case, right? There's a process that we would use. And the first of these 3 steps, I think, is really important. And that is that we frame it up. We frame up or frame it in a way that's powerful. So you look at the situation that you're in after taking that deep breath, after being able to hopefully embrace it. You can say, so how is it that this might actually serve me? How is it that this is actually a creative opportunity in my life? Maybe the health diagnosis at a minimum is it's a call to slow down. It's a call to change. Like I've got an amazing woman by the name of Elizabeth Yarnell who teaches on the topic of autoimmune challenges. And I'm going to make an introduction to you. I think she'd be a wonderful person for you to meet. And I remember she was saying, and she was diagnosed with MS when she was in her late 20s. She says her diet was so awful. So she's working, sort of 80 hours a week, and she's surviving on, those candy goldfish. What are those called? Like on sugar candies and sweets and things like that. Oh, Swedish fish, right? So she's eating Swedish fish, right, to keep herself going. So it could be that the diagnosis is a call to slow down or change something so that something doesn't, happen down the line that might really take you out or change things in a way that's even more profound. So framing up is the first key. The second one is to dig for the wisdom. My grandmother used to call those little gems. What are the little distinctions or the little things that you have learned as a result of this thing that's happening right now? So what is the wisdom that you've gained or can anticipate that you will gain? That's the second step. And the third step is self-care. And that's where those rituals for recovery and those rituals for resilience really come in, that we've got to take care of ourselves better, even better than we've been taking care of ourselves, whether that means to adopt a practice for meditation or do yoga or just change your diet in some way or go away and clear some space to recover, etc., but that you will really commit at a high level to self-care, which I think women have more problems with this than men, and in particular, women who are also mothers too, because women, I think, have been programmed to be more selfless, to have more people that they are taking care of than focusing their attention on caring for themselves. So these 3 things, this framing up, finding the wisdom, and then really committing, not just lip service to it, but that you actually commit to self-care would be one of those, that's an area that we want to share with more people, that's the process of creating resilience.
Awesome. And you're so right about these little markers that happen. When I reflected back with my functional medicine practitioner, which I love the concept of functional medicine, where they go back through your history instead of just dealing with, oh, you have sniffles today. Why are we here? Because when I went through my history, there were markers that were precursors to autoimmune way before the actual diagnosis, not knowing. And I also thought that I ate healthy, but now I realized that just having a salad for lunch is not eating healthy. And nothing like an autoimmune diagnosis to get you to commit to the process as well. Because when you're feeling okay, you're not great, you're like, okay, I'll just keep moving. You can commit to it for the short term, but then it's so easy to cheat when somebody comes along and says, hey, you want to go out tonight, or you want to do this, or you want to do that, or it's just a piece of cake.
And this is the thing that I think is really cool too, is how it is that what's happening ultimately ends up being how you serve the world, that your situation, your suffering or pain even becomes your credential in some ways to help other people. So for example, with my friend Elizabeth Yarnell, she became a a massively successful cookbook author of recipes that she created for herself to heal herself. Louise Hay's, heal your life, right? So she created these cookbooks and has an incredible business around that, and has had tremendous success, which would not have existed but for the fact that she walks into a doctor's office who sits her down and tells her she has MS at like 28 years old. So you go, that's awful. Who would ever want to have that happen? Sit down and have that be told to them. And a lot of your listeners, your viewers are probably thinking the same thing. I've had this said to me and that to me. I never would want that or wish it on anybody. And yet how you utilize it, how you create alchemy around it, in essence, right? Turning lead to gold is really a part of the mystery and the elegance of life. Beautiful.
Oh, and that's what we call thrivers here, the ones who have taken it and found something unique. I've talked to friends about this before who said, well, people say, do you want your old life back? And it was a resounding no. They were all like, no. When I think about it, there are certain things I still maybe wish I could do, but do I want my old life back? No. And what was fascinating, I'd say probably 80% of us all said, we're nicer people after all of this happened. We've slowed down, we've stopped, we've looked around, we've taken into consideration a lot more things than we were considering before the diagnosis. I think that's one of the little gems that your grandma would have mentioned is, and people are like going, oh, that's such a strange thing to say, but it's really true that I think a diagnosis or any life crisis really, it changes the way you view the world forever. There really is no going back. If someone even had a magic wand, there really is no going back.
No. Now, I know that we've only got a couple of minutes here, but if it's possible, I would love to just take a second and share a gift.
Absolutely.
We have an amazing community. It's a Facebook group called Start My Pivot, and folks can go to startmypivot.com before deciding whether they want to even join the community on Facebook, because some people don't dig that anyway, which is totally cool. There's not having to join the community before that. On that page, startmypivot.com, there's 6 questions that we call our Kickstart guide. And it's totally free. There's nothing being sold. It's just a guide that we created for people who are pivoting, whether it's in health or other areas. And these are 6 really powerful questions that if they'll print them and write out their answers, they will find some pretty interesting discoveries, self-discoveries, as well as some of the rituals that we have used, sort of morning, midday, and evening kind of rituals to create more resilience. So that's a gift. Startmypivot.com. If anybody would love to check that out, we're happy to have people do that.
Oh, that was so kind. Thank you, Adam, for offering it. What a great gift. I'll have that URL up on understandingautoimmune.com for everyone to be sure and get that. Thank you so much, because everything you've shared today is just great gems for being able to get not just the physical, but get through that mental part that sometimes trips us up more than the physical part. So yes. Tonight, Adam, thank you so much. I just want to reintroduce you to everyone. We've been hearing from Adam, who is the CEO of More Love Media, as well as an author and a business expert who teaches professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders how to transform their life. His best-selling book is called Pivot, The Art and Science of Reinventing Your Career and Life. And you can also find more about Adam at adammarkel.com. And we'll have that URL as well up on our website, understandingautoimmune.com. Thank you so much. It was really awesome to hear all about this because, like I said, how you do one thing is how you do everything in your life.
Thank you so much. What a blessing. And I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. This was a wonderful conversation.
Absolutely. I'm just energized now. So thank you. Take care. Everyone, we'll be right back after this commercial break.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Change and growth are part of natural life and also part of your spiritual life. Everyone needs support and guidance, especially during life passages. Upgrade yourself with the OMTimes Experts program. With OMTimes Experts, you have access to the best intuitive coaches, spiritual teachers, counselors, astrologists, and oracles. Our team was carefully selected so you can trust. Find out more at experts.omtimes.com.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Well, welcome back. Wasn't Adam amazing and fun? That was so exciting to understand this whole concept of pivot. And right now I've got the awesome Roberta Mittman. I call her our in-house wellness coach, because we're going to talk about how do we change these limiting behaviors. Adam was talking a lot about changing our limiting beliefs and our limiting behaviors. And Roberta is a dedicated alternative healthcare practitioner, wellness coach, speaker, author, licensed acupuncturist, and certified nutritional consultant. And she offers guidance to people around the world to look and feel unstoppable. I love that. And she's got this magic way about her. It's just this perfect holistic blend of understanding Western principles, just in cutting edge Western information, as well as timeless Eastern principles. And Chinese medicine is part of those Eastern principles, and acupuncture. So I just love that about her. And she's been on the show several times, and I asked her back because I want these easy to execute tips, because oftentimes I can get something from a doctor and it sounds easy, but then I start to feel better and I slip off the wagon, so to speak. So welcome, Roberta. Thanks for being here. She's the one who keeps me on the wagon, guys.
Oh, you're so welcome, Sharon. Thank you for inviting me. I love our conversation.
Tell us about this idea of how often that you as a practitioner yourself, or you as the patients you speak to, you find that even with the best of intentions, once you start to feel a little bit better, it's easy to fall off to the track that made you feel better.
Hey, listen, we're all just human, and after a while it just gets boring, it gets hard, it gets like, is this really working? You get distracted and you lose your momentum. And I mean, you could use that about anything, about like autoimmune. You could use that about an eating plan. You hear that all the time. It's hard to get back. And sometimes you can't always just get back exactly the same. You have to make a teeny little change just to make it like, oh, okay, I can do that. It's just really sometimes hard to go back. So, a lot of times it's really the way you're thinking about it, not you, but one is thinking about it, because the plan hasn't changed. We've changed.
Yes. Well, sometimes the pain is a lot less. And so I'm thinking I'll fall off the wagon because, today's a birthday. Just today I can cheat and have sugar and cake and what have you. Or for me, at least with the diet, it doesn't take long for me to feel that, no, I guess I can't cheat.
But it's just this once.
Who turns into being, well, that wasn't so bad. Maybe one more time, or I got away with it last time. I'll do it this time. So what are some things you help people like myself, who, when with the best of intentions and we get great plans from practitioners like yourself, what are some ways that you help get us back on course?
Well, Sharon, I have developed a 3-stage plan to address this specifically because it is such a common thing. Trust me, it's me and everybody else out there. You have a lot of company. And that's why I developed this plan, because it just helps to crystallize a way to not only get back, but maybe to view it a little bit differently. And it's called my 3 R's. The 3 R's are recognize, reframe, and reclaim. It's simple. It doesn't need to be difficult to do. Sometimes it sounds easier than it is, but it really gives somebody an opportunity to quickly go through and assess where they are, what they need to do, and to keep your eye on the goal. because that's sometimes the important thing. Not the moment with the chocolate cake, but what is the real goal? And is this going to get you closer to it or further away? Is it going to make your pain worse, or is it going to make your pain better? Right? So those 3 steps I find are really very helpful for people, and I'm happy to go through them with you if you'd like to.
Absolutely. Now, just in a quick clarity here, it sounds like I could do that in the moment when I'm being handed the birthday cake, that I could recognize, reframe, and reclaim in the moment. This, as well as doing it maybe after I've slipped off the wagon.
You can do it anytime. Once you start just kind of incorporate it a few times, it gets to be really easy and automatic. And you just kind of slip into those 3 things. 1, 2, 3. Like that. 1, 2, 3. It doesn't take a lot of time and effort. But if afterwards you have time to really think about it, it's very helpful because it can really be a catalyst for a lot of different ways of looking at it. I'll go through it and I'll tell you, but you'll see what I mean. Maybe I should try this one thing that I've been putting off. Or, I deserve to live like this. Or I could change my self-talk. So why don't we start from the first one?
Absolutely. Let's start with the one that's really common, is being tempted by sugar.
Sure. That we could do. And so
I think that's really common.
Yes, that is so common. When you're faced with that, first step then would be to recognize. What is recognize? That's your self-talk. So it's really mindfulness. Like, what are you thinking in this moment? And I think
I'm thinking that cake looks really good.
Okay, perfect. You're thinking it looks really good. And then you're going to reframe it and say, well, we'll talk about it. It looks really good. So you're also probably thinking, it looks really good, but maybe I shouldn't have it. Or maybe let's cheat. Or just this once. Or, or like, I deserve it. I'm going to have it and I deserve it.
You keep saying or, and I think I would say all of those things.
Exactly.
I would go through this whole thing. Oh, it looks really good. Oh, I shouldn't cheat. Oh, but just this once. I think I would go through that entire part of recognizing very quickly in my mind all this rationalization.
That's kind of what it is. It's really pay attention to your self-talk. And it just takes a second to do that. Do you know what I mean? And it's really important because you can't make a change in anything or get back on track until you know where you are. Do you know what I mean? So what's like, a lot of times you're going to go to a place and you're going to see that cake and you're going to say, it looks really good, but it's not on my plan. Or, I can always have cake another time. I'm going to pass on this one. Or who knows what, right? But, and I should say, there's sometimes when it's going to look so tempting and you're just going to be like, melting inside and say, I gotta have it. So what's the difference between those 2 times? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, what is going on in that moment? And I know it's really hard to assess that, but just say, if you could think of recognize, I really want it. Why? Just think about that for a second. I really want it. Why? Because I'm hungry, because it looks good, because what? So just
what comes up for me? Interesting. Is emotions come up for me.
Emotions.
Every time I've asked myself the question, it's not been about, when I say I really want that, it's not like I'm hungry for it. I could go have the apple on the other buffet table, It's about emotions of it, I think. Maybe sometimes I'm reflecting back to a birthday party where everyone else was having birthday cake. And, the little child comes up and hands you the birthday cake as well. Is there, sometimes at big events, little kids pass out the plates of cake. It's just so easy at that moment to indulge.
Absolutely. And it's kind of like a knee-jerk reaction. I'm going to have it. And sometimes if you could just quickly press that pause button and say, okay, I'm just going to think about this for a minute. Is this like, why do I really want this? And sometimes that will help. Or what's going on? What am I thinking? What are the emotions? Everyone's having it. I want it too. It's kind of like all of those things are totally justifiable, but sometimes it helps to know, like if you're trying to avoid sugar and it's right there and you're able to just press the pause button, it takes practice. It really does. Because sometimes if you're just doing, I see it, I want it, I'm having it. You know what I mean? And there's no room for anything. But if you can just expand that moment for a minute and make a decision about it, I think that's a better idea. And just say, what am I thinking? What's the emotion around it? And then we go to the next phase, would be the reframe phase. And the reframe helps you to reframe some of those triggers. And it can be really fast. It could be like, instead of thinking, everyone's having it and I want it, or just this once, you could be thinking something like, yes, I could have it just this once, but then I know that I'm opening up Pandora's box. I'm having it again and again. I'm opening the floodgates. Or you could say something like, everyone else is having it, but I'm really going to be okay. I don't really have to have it. I'll have something else. I mean, you could be logical about it. Or you could say, I really, really, really want it, and I don't want to screw up all the success I've had before, up till now.
That's where I go quite often.
Yeah.
The two reframes I do quite often is, okay, I have been on this healing path for so long and it's working so well, and I don't want to feel the pain tomorrow. So that's my reframe.
There you go. No guilt, no remorse. The next day, you can respect yourself in the morning, right?
Exactly, because I didn't have the cake at the birthday party. Let's describe more about reframing, because I think people get confused of what that is. We talked about like this is cake and sugar, but what are some other ways people can reframe the situation into a different outcome?
Okay, I love talking about the reframe, because to me, when it talks about mindset, it's really wonderful. It's just a great conversation. So some of the other ways that I like to use, and I'd love to hear your suggestions when you work with people about reframing this. Sometimes I'll say to people like, well, who is the person you want to be in this situation? And we'll talk about it. Yeah. What are you going to look like? What are you going to sound like? What actions are you going to take? Who is this person? And, once we kind of change the script a little bit, somebody can step into it a little bit easier. So actually, when somebody's going to a party, this whole process would start even before they left, because there's certain things they know they need to do before they go, such as never go hungry. You're going to see sweet things and wonderful things. What is that person going to do moving forward? Stepping into that self who wants to be, who has this goal that you have. What does he or she do? What do you sound like? What is the actions like? Just visualizing, I think, is important.
Oh, yeah. That's really a great tip. When you're going to go into a tempting situation, is to visualize it beforehand, because then you're not caught off guard. You're just like, oh, I'm ready for that question, or I'm ready for that. Because sometimes people, I don't think they mean to harm you, but you're at their party and they're, oh, but you just have to try the cannoli, I mean,
I made it just for you.
Yes, exactly. Or, something along those lines. And I think that's a really great tip, because oftentimes those people we know well are the ones where we're going into their homes or their parties. We know them well enough to run through the script in our mind beforehand, because we'll know that, oh, so-and-so over there, she's always going to bring her world famous baked beans and want me to try them, or something along those lines,
Right. Or she's a food pusher. I always know when I'm going to someplace and they're going to put pressure on me. So I visualize, who am I going to be there? What am I going to say? What am I going to sound like? What am I going to wear? How am I going to, the whole thing. And I make sure that I eat something before I go, so I'm not ravenous and everything doesn't look like I have to have it.
I always stick a little something in my purt and take it with me too, in case I get delayed and then start to get ravenous. Excuse me.
Exactly. Perfect.
Eat what I need to eat. Well, we're down to just the last few minutes. We're going to have you back on like we always do, but let's talk about this final process of reclaim, correct?
Sure. Yes, the reclaim. Well, actually the reframe is the biggest one. And the reclaim is simply to have your plan and work it. Is to move forward and reclaim your best health. Take action. It's nice to think about them and talk about these things, but what are you going to do? Are you going to journal a little bit about your feelings, about your eating, about how you felt about having that cake? If you had it, if you didn't have it, what is that going to mean for you and the rest of your plan? How are you going to move forward? It's really taking action, trying something new, acupuncture, taking a cooking class, about healthy eating. There's so many different things that you could do and moving forward.
Absolutely. That's what I love. And one thing that you shared with us a while ago, part of this was always to be sure and celebrate your success. If you left that party following your plan, give yourself a high five or
Totally, because the reframe is also getting rid of the negative self-talk and changing it to more positive, like I'm really doing my best and I'm going to move forward. Reclaim is really actually moving forward. It's like taking all of those tools that we've collected, because it's a little bit of a longer process, when you think about it, and moving forward, actually taking action, and celebrating is a big part of it too.
Is when I'm through that process, because at home it's easy, I'm surrounded by my environment with my own foods and things. I always sort of give myself a high five or self-congratulations, like, okay, girl, you did it. You got through. Congratulations. So be sure and always celebrate those small wins.
Absolutely.
We're just down to the last few minutes, Roberta.
Okay.
What final thoughts do you have? And then be sure to tell everyone how to get a hold of you and mention your book too.
Oh, thank you. I actually have it here because it's all about the 3 R's that we talked about. Ultimate wellness, the 3 mental shifts you can use to change the course of your health right now. And it's all about the 3 R's. So it's really apropos, and it goes into all of those 3 phases, different aspects of health. My final words are, figure out, really look at where you are. You can't make a map unless you know where you are. Make a plan about where you want to go. What do you want to see in your journey, and how do you want it to feel? And the third part would be make a roadmap, because you can't go unless you have a map. So that's a 3-phase, and I think it can really help in so many different situations.
Thank you so much, Roberta. Be sure and join us next week for another episode of the Autoimmune Hour. So everyone, have a great weekend, whatever your adventures. Join me next Friday. Enjoy.
The information provided on lifeinterruptedradio.com is for educational purposes only. What you hear, read, and see on Life Interrupted Radio is based on experience only. The information presented here should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any of the recommendations you see, hear, or read here on Life Interrupted Radio.